The chapter starts out with the author's earliest memory. Wes was playing around with his sister and everything was going fine until Wes did what any other 3-year-old would do when playing with his older sibling. He punched her in the face. Now, when Wes's mom sees what's going on, she gets really upset. But the thing is, Wes was too young to understand what was going on, so obviously he was confused. And when I say that his mom was upset, she was really upset. Like, she was 5 seconds away from hitting this kid, and I'm not even making it up, it says it in the book. But anyway, we all know what 3-year-olds do when they get in trouble. They go into their room and hide. While Wes was hiding in his room from his mom, she was getting more and more angry at him. But Wes's father, who watched the entire thing from the living room, tried to calm her down. Wes's father was explaining the whole deal, how Wes was too young to understand the consequences of his actions. So after the arguing died down, Wes's father went upstairs to his son's room to have a little talk with him. Basically he explained that men are supposed to protect women, not fight them. What's shown in this chapter is the quality of the father-son relationship in this family. You see, Wes looks up to his father, and he mimics the simplest things like the way he walks or the way he talks, just because he looks up to him so much. So, this is where things start to get serious in the chapter. Now, one day, Wes's father comes home from work, and his throat isn't feeling too good. And the next day, he decides to go to the hospital. Now, there was obviously something wrong with Wes's father. It was described that he couldn't even open his eyes and that his head flopped from one side. But the doctors couldn't put a cause to his discomfort. They just dismissed him as insane and sent him home.
My father was dead 5 hours after having been released from the hospital with the simple instruction to get some sleep. The same hospital was now preparing to send his body to the morgue. My father had entered the hospital seeking help, but his face was unshaven, his clothes disheveled, his name unfamiliar, his address not in an affluent area. The hospital looked at him in askance, insulted him with ridiculous questions, and basically told him to fend for himself. Now, my mother had to plan his funeral.
Right before Wes's father collapsed, the entire family was really in the kitchen except Wes's father. Wes's mother was cooking in the kitchen, Nikki was taking care of the baby, and Wes was just working on his coloring books at the kitchen table. Everything was all good until they heard the crash coming from the living room. Once Wes's mother saw what was going on, she immediately commanded her daughter to call the police, and Wes's father was driven in an ambulance to the hospital. That was the author's part of the chapter. Now we're moving on to Wes Moore's part of the chapter. Well, I mean the other Wes Moore. They're both Wes Moore, but you know what I mean, right? You know what I mean, okay? This is what Wes Moore is gonna look like now, right? That's the other Wes Moore. The other Wes Moore starts his part of the chapter watching television at his mother's house. Wes's mother calls to the house to let him know that he has to pick up his stuff because he was going to his grandparents' house. At this time, Wes's mom was still young and was in school despite the fact that she had 2 children. Since Wes didn't exactly catch what his mother said, he went up to his mother's room where she was blasting the radio. After finally getting her attention, he realized she was very upset because of her school. Wes's mother sat him down and explained the importance of education and the situation she was in. Eventually, Wes was driven to his grandparents' house. Excited, he ran up the steps to the door and entered the living room where he saw an unfamiliar figure. And that figure was his father. And that's how chapter 1 ended. The end. Haha, just kidding. There was a lot of detail about Westmore's mother that I left out. I decided to put it at the end. Okay, so we're gonna start with the author's mother. Remember her? She was the one who was getting all upset. Yeah. Okay, her name's Joy. Okay, well, Joy immigrated to the United States from Jamaica, and she spent her entire childhood desperately trying to fit in by observing her fellow classmates and listening to the radio, trying to copy how people spoke and acted. Eventually, she became assimilated to the American culture. In 1968, Joy became the first one in her family to attend a college. And as big as an accomplishment as that was, Joy wanted more. Although she felt satisfied as a Jamaican, she was not satisfied as an American, and joined an African American club at her college. There she met Bill, a seemingly nice guy with seemingly controllable habits who she had her first child with. Unfortunately, drug and alcohol got the best of Bill, and in the end, an abusive relationship was born. It continued until one night, Joy stood up for herself and took her child and left Bill. So this basically explains why, in the beginning of the chapter, Wes's mom was so mad when he punched his sister in the face. Oh, and remember the other Westmore's mom? Yeah, her name is Mary. She grew up in Baltimore, 5 miles away from Johns Hopkins, and had always dreamed to someday get there. At the age of 16, she was pregnant, and that dream was almost gone, but Mary's mother made her promise not to give up on school. But soon after that, Mary's mother died, and she was left without a mother for herself and a father for her child because he left. Then, Mary met another man named Bernard, and they had a kid named Westmore together. However, he didn't stick around very long either, so she was left almost alone with 2 kids. Regardless of this, she was still accepted to Johns Hopkins and was working in order to supplement a grant that helped her pay for school. But under the Reagan administration, the education budget was cut in half, and Mary's grant was terminated, which is why she was so upset when Wes came into her room. So that's really it. A couple key things you want to pick out of this chapter is that it's very important because it addresses the fact that the few memories the author had of his father were very positive ones, and that money plays a huge role in these people's lives. If the author's father had shown up in the hospital that day with a shaved face and a clean set of clothing, do you think that he would have died? If the other Westmore's mother had more money, then she'd be able to pursue her dreams. Yeah, but that's really it. Bye.